Hello, my name is David Welch, and today I'll be discussing an article written by Gail Reeves called Accounting for Anguish. And it really is a story that takes a look at the true cost of maintaining your ethical integrity. It's a story about a gentleman by the name of Kim Amy, who worked for MCI WorldCom, started there in 1996, and almost immediately started to recognize certain irregularities or areas of concern, I might say, regarding some invoices from vendors, contractors, seemed to be overcharging MCI WorldCom. Brought him to the attention of his supervisors, and they always said, "Let it go, let it go." At the time, MCI WorldCom was kind of a darling of Wall Street. They could do no wrong. They were making a lot of money, hand over fist, and so he elected to kind of let it go. This continued until about 2000, when the telecom industry as a whole started to experience a downturn through overexpansion and a lot of other things, increased competition, and MCI WorldCom found themselves in a bit of a cash-strapped situation, and so he received an email. Amy received an email instructing him to record capital expenditures as expenses. Well, he considered that to be an illegal act because it would misstate the company's true financial picture, and so he brought it to the attention of his supervisor. His supervisor said, "Nope, absolutely not. Let it go, let it go. This is what we're going to do." He was not comfortable with that, so he reached out to a friend who was the assistant to the chief operating officer and said, "Is this really WorldCom's policy?" And she said, "No, absolutely not, absolutely not." Shortly after that, received an email retracting the directive, and so he felt a little bit assured that things were going to be better. But his supervisor came in and confronted him and asked if he had made that call, and he said yes, he did. And his supervisor said, "Well, I'll have your job for this." And sure enough, about 10 weeks later, he found himself a part of a RIF, a reduction in force, which it was interesting. He was the only full-time person who was reduced. He was laid off. Well, he tried really hard to find a job. That was in March of 2001, and then he couldn't get a job, and he thought WorldCom maybe had something to do with that. And then in September of 2001, 9/11 hit, made it even harder to find a job. And the real deal is that both Amy, his wife, his kids, everybody, he suffered a great deal of anguish just because he chose to maintain his ethical integrity, and that's wrong. He could have instead chose to follow the directive, and he would have still had his job, and he would have still been working. He wouldn't have had to experience a lot of that pain that he did suffer. Or he could have reported it perhaps to an outside agency. Dodd-Frank wasn't in place yet, but he still might have received some sort of protection or something from the federal government had he reported it to the SEC. Did he follow IMA reporting guidelines? Not necessarily. I don't think so, because even though he was quick to point it out to his direct supervisor, he never followed through until the ethical question was resolved. He just reported it to his supervisor and then let it go. He did in the instance of what he believed to be an illegal act. He reported it up the chain and received an email retracting the directive, and so in his mind the issue was resolved. So in fact he did follow that. But he also should have perhaps consulted with someone from outside the organization, an IMA advisor, and that might have given him some better suggestions on how he could have reported it to someone else. There's a gentleman, Joseph Badaracco, Operating Instructions. He offers some guidelines in an article that he wrote called "We Don't Need Another Hero," and those are difficult guidelines for Amy to have followed, given the intensity of the thing and the timing of this situation he found himself in. So I don't know that he could have really followed those suggestions. the real thing here is the true cost of maintaining his ethical standards. He and his family suffered enormously, financially, emotionally, even health. They developed health problems because they couldn't sleep. They were just really suffering for quite some time. They had to rely on family, friends, even sometimes total strangers just to get by, and that's really difficult. The other thing is WorldCom was still the darling of Wall Street, and they were riding the high wave and doing really well, and that had to be tough to watch while he was struggling just to get by. But the cost could have been his reputation and moral character, which he never put in danger. At the end of the day, I believe Kim Amy did the right thing, even though it cost him his job and it cost him a year of really difficult times. He did the right thing in not following what they wanted him to do. His character stood up to the challenge, and I admire him for that, and I applaud him for that, and that was the right thing to do.